Can Tai Tuivasa shock the world again? With UFC Paris right around the corner, many favor Surreal Ghan by a pretty wide margin. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy MMA, I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it. Tai Tuivasa has been becoming one of the more popular fighters in the UFC due to his charisma outside the cage, his fighting style in the cage, and the fact that he's been winning a lot as of late as well. And after his huge victory over Derrick Lewis, Tai has firmly put himself in the upper level of the heavyweight division. Now, whether or not he's going to stay at that upper tier remains to be seen, but this matchup against Ciryl is going to be a huge test for him. But now, let's actually get into this matchup between Tai and Ciryl. So I first want to break down Tai Tuivasa's game to really see what he does well out there. So it's pretty obvious when watching him, Tai is a stand-up fighter. He has a really nice ability to throw the jab, he has a nice uppercut, a nice hook, a nice right straight. He has the ability to switch stances as well, although he's mostly in the orthodox stance. Obviously, he has a ton of power in his hands, as he does have a ton of knockouts. He has nice elbows in close, which is something he just knocked out Derrick Lewis with in his last fight. He also has phenomenal kicks to the legs with great timing, but also he has a ton of power in those leg kicks, and when he times up a really good leg kick, he really hurts his opponent's legs. It kind of just shows you the timing he has, but also of course the amount of power he has in those kicks. He also has the ability to throw knees in close, although he doesn't necessarily utilize it all that much. Now, in terms of his takedown defense, obviously it's not good. He got taken down by Derrick Lewis. I don't know if I need to say anything more than that, but on the ground, Tai isn't really good at that whatsoever either. If he does end up getting taken to the ground, he's just looking to get back to the feet in any way possible. Now, in terms of his chin, Tai actually has a phenomenal chin. He was taking huge shots from Derrick Lewis, who has the most knockouts in UFC history. Obviously, he has a ton of power in his hands, so if Tai is able to take multiple heavy shots from Derrick Lewis, he probably has a pretty good chin. Now, in terms of his cardio, he definitely doesn't necessarily have the best cardio, and it is going to be interesting to see if he can't get a knockout early, if he's able to go all 5 rounds, and how he actually looks. So his cardio definitely is a question mark, especially in a matchup against a guy who's as quick as Ciryl Ghan is. So overall, when you look at Tai's game, he is pretty one-conventional. He's just a stand-up fighter. He has no ground game whatsoever. But with that being said, this is the heavyweight division. You don't necessarily need to have as many skills as you would need to have in the bantamweight division, for example, and power really trumps everything else. And the fact that Tai does have a ton of power and clearly has knockout power does wonders for him. But now, let's move on to Ciryl Ghan and see what he does well out there. So starting with his stand-up, Ciryl is a very unique fighter for the heavyweight division. He's extremely fast and he's very light on his feet. He does a really nice job at quickly getting in, throwing a couple shots at his opponents, and before his opponent could return and counter, he's immediately out of there. He's extremely quick for the division. And although he doesn't necessarily have the power of a Tai Tuivasa or a Derrick Lewis, he definitely does have nice power, I would say. But Ciryl has a really nice jab, he has a nice uppercut, hook, cross. Of course, he's able to switch stances whenever he wants. He has pretty nice kicks to the legs, nice kicks to the body, kicks to the head even. He's extremely athletic. And as I mentioned before, he's not really a power puncher. He's more so of a guy that's just going to touch you and get points on the scorecards, but at the same time, he of course is a heavyweight and he definitely does have knockout power, although it isn't as prevalent in the heavyweight division. Now, in terms of his ground game, he doesn't necessarily have the best ground game either, as he got taken down at will against Francis Ngannou, who isn't necessarily known for his takedowns, and he was also held down for most of the fight. But at the same time, I would say he has decent jiu-jitsu and a decent submission threat, and that's also something that he's been working on ever since that Francis fight, so I definitely would expect him to be a little bit better in this matchup against Tai. Now, in terms of his chin, we haven't necessarily seen it tested all that much, but I would say I think he has a good chin. Obviously, even if you have a great chin, you can easily get knocked out in the heavyweight division. That's how hard hard these guys punch, but overall I would say he has a pretty good chin. Now in terms of his cardio, he definitely has pretty good cardio. He did somewhat gas out in his last fight against Francis, but that was mostly because most of the fight was on the ground and he was just constantly fighting takedowns, and on the ground he was just constantly trying to get back to his feet or switching positions, which is extremely tiring. But now let's move on to the question of the video, which is, could Tai Tuivasa actually shock the world and beat Ciryl Gane? Well, in my opinion, this is a very difficult matchup for Tai, and stylistically it definitely does not favor him. I think for Tai there's really only one method of victory, and that would be to get the knockout. If Tai's able to get that one big shot off on Surreal, or maybe multiple big shots, I definitely see him being able to knock out Surreal. But at the same time, if Tai isn't necessarily able to get clean shots on Surreal, the longer the fight goes on, the worse it would get for him in my opinion. Because I definitely do worry about his gas tank, and even if he's able to stay somewhat fresh for let's say 3 rounds, and rounds 4 and 5, I don't necessarily know if he would be able to be fresh enough to stay on the front foot and put the pressure on Surreal, because if he's going backwards, Surreal is probably just going to have a field day with him. And in my opinion, I think if Tai Tuivasa doesn't get the knockout in the first 2 rounds, it probably won't go all that well for him. Now obviously he does have a ton of power, and even if he is tired, he definitely could get a knockout in the later stages of the fight, but in my opinion, I feel like his best chance to win is to get an early knockout in the first 2 rounds. But now let's talk about Ciryl Gane's method of victory. So in my opinion, what Ciryl needs to do, especially early on, is just do what he does. Stay light on your feet, go in and out quickly, don't allow Tai to connect with those counter shots. If Surreal's able to just throw kicks to the legs, throw a jab, and stay far away from Tai for the most part, I think he's going to have success on the scorecards early on. And as the fight does go on, and as Tai does get more and more tired, there definitely is an opportunity for Surreal to get a finish later on in the fight. And honestly, I could see somewhat of a similar fight to Surreal and Derek Lewis, where early on Surreal just picked Derek Lewis apart from the outside, and as the fight did progress, and as Derek Lewis got more and more tired, then Surreal started to push in a little bit more and look for that finish. So really for Surreal, I see a bunch of different methods of victory. He could win by decision by just outpointing Tai for 5 rounds. I could also see him get a finish, as I mentioned before, or the third method of victory that I could see from him, which probably isn't necessarily something a lot of people see coming, is I actually could see Surreal get a submission. Because of course I mentioned that Tai isn't really good on the ground, and also Surreal has been working on his jiu-jitsu and a submission threat in general, so I definitely could see him getting a submission over Tai if the fight gets to the ground, but that is a big if. But my official prediction for this matchup is I see Surreal winning by decision, but honestly I could also see those other 2 methods panning out as well. Now for Tai Tuivasa, there's always that puncher's chance in the heavyweight division, and obviously Tai has a ton of power, so if he's able to connect with Surreal, he definitely has the capability of knocking him out with any shot that he throws. But the real key would be, could Tai actually get to Surreal? Because that's something a lot of different fighters in the heavyweight division have really struggled with when facing Surreal, especially Derek Lewis we just saw, where they just can't get to Surreal. He's just too quick for them, and his footwork is too good for these guys. So it would be interesting to see if Tai is able to do that. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Tai Tuivasa has a chance at winning this matchup, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy it, check one of these 2 videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.